everybody, Steve Politi here from NJ Advanced Media. Welcome back. I am joined, as always, by Keith Sargeant, James Kratch. I'm not sure why we decided to do it, but I'm going to do it today. But I'm excited about it because, we haven't talked in like 3 months, and a lot has happened over that span of time, to say the very least. We'll talk a little wrestling, a little basketball, a little more wrestling, because I know how much Sarge loves the wrestling, some football, some beer sale, some women's basketball, and then we'll finish with wrestling. What do you think? What do you say?
Sounds good. Can we drink some beer? Can we drink some beer, or do we only have to talk it? We're talking it or drinking it, or what? Or both?
I've been drinking.
Little bingo action?
Beer bingo. I've been drinking for half an hour. Where do you want to start? Do you want to start with football or basketball? It's basketball season, but football's in the news. I mean, tell me. What do you think?
We'll talk basketball. I mean, I was at practice today, Yeah, I mean, we're talking about the Fighting Pikels who are showing progress. And, I wrote the other day, I mean, they took a big step forward as far as, it sounds like a modest goal, but when you've been covering it as long as you have, and, longtime Rutgers fans know, the last time they finished 500 or better was 13 years ago. So, they have a very good chance to do it now. If they won their final, 3 regular season games, they would, guarantee it. I think they, have a good chance to win 2 of their final 3 regular season games and maybe win a Big Ten tournament game. And, there you go.
That's incredible, by the way. That's just an amazing stat.
13 years.
Think about how long that's been. And being at the RAC and watching them beat Minnesota, and that was a gutty win. The one day after Coach Peichel buries his mom, emotional win. What my takeaway was, and Crash, maybe you can tell me if you agree. It's just, when you look at those 4 freshmen, and you're like, you can't pinpoint which one has the highest upside, because they all seem to be, there's just so much room for those kids to get better. And they're already pretty good. That's such a good nucleus. I mean, you've got to feel really good about that if you're a Rutgers fan.
No, I think you definitely do it. And what struck me was last year, when one of the first events I covered when I got on the beat, they played Ohio State on a Sunday night. They lost by like 20 of the Buckeyes, small crowd, dead. You think about this, coming into Sunday night, not a lot of build up for the game. Minnesota's not ranked, but, not a lot of hype for that game. They pop an announced attendance over 7,000, 6:30 on a Sunday night. Minnesota is trying to get in the tournament. Rutgers, the game really means nothing to Rutgers except for pride. And they go beat that team, packed house, it's loud. I mean, I just think that's a sign that this program has clearly kind of taken, it's got a hold in the community. It's captured Rutgers fans' imagination. Because a lot of time, they would win a game and people would get excited, then they'd lose a game and the interest would just go out the window. It's sustained now, I think.
I think it was 7,000. I think it was 7,001 because Politi actually made a rare appearance on a basketball game.
How about that? Look at that. Throw me under the bus.
It's been 3 months, guys. We need to throw some punches.
Absolutely. And I was there, and I wrote a column I talked about Steve Peichel and his mom, and, this is my takeaway. You understand why people who have met Steve Peichel swear by him. I mean, he is really just a down-to-earth, good guy off the court. I'm not talking about what he's done. He's done a fantastic job basketball-wise, but, I had a half-an-hour conversation with him in his office, talked about his mom, talked about the culture he's building. He doesn't let you walk out of there without, asking you 6 questions about yourself. I mean, and this is the guy at 11 p.m., the day after he buried his mom. So, I mean, it's just, I think the crowd responds to him in a way that I haven't seen in a while at the RAC. And he's standing on the sidelines waving his arms up and down. And the moment he does that, the place goes bonkers. So, it's a good thing they've got going down there. And you would think that it's the thing that makes it most positive for Rutgers. You feel like it is the start of something, not the peak of, this is going to be expectations now for this program going forward.
Yeah, and I'll say this, as far as being a good guy, you just never know because, it's just, we've seen too many of these, stories pop up, around the country of whether it's Arizona or, throughout the country. You just never know. So I always preface it that you never know, right? But I am fairly almost as confident as you can get as a reporter, because you're always skeptical, but as confident as you can ever get as a reporter that Steve Peichel's doing it the right way. I'll give you one anecdote just from today, because I'm at practice. I'm doing a feature that'll pop later this week, and sometimes as a reporter, James can knows this as well. You get some access, and people are like a little worried because there's so many NCAA rules as far as like what they can say about a certain topic or what they can do, and so the media relations guy asked the strength coach Dave Van Dyke whether or not he could talk about this, and Dave was like, well, yeah, it's going to be fine. That Steve does everything the right way. Like, he doesn't cheat at all. He doesn't, everything is, on the up and up. So, I'm sure that, everything is fine. And, there's not going to be any worries about anything that I show, this reporter, so it's just like one anecdote, just one, I came away of that. It's like, this is, right. Coach who is clearly, doing it the right way as far as I could tell.
Yeah. And let's be honest, I thought they were going to have to start handing out bags of money to get that program heading back in the right direction. So there was going to have to be, a FedEx envelope filled with 20s for that to happen.
There was a point where you just got so tired of writing, so many, like, you just can't believe this is happening to this program, that there was a point, like, I'm like, you know what, if I saw, name that coach, giving a bag of money to this New Jersey recruit, you know what? I might look the other way at this point.
Like, I just, right. Someone's trying. Someone's trying. That's
exactly. Good. I might just look the other way. I can understand why they got to that point.
I think what impresses me, and they've had. I mean, we've been through it. They've had a fight. They've had McDonald's All-Americans. They've had Mike Rosarios. The fact that he identified guys who were less recruited than they should have, and clearly than they should. I mean, Miles Johnson, clearly someone screwed up and get that kid out of California. I mean, he's 6'11", he's got nice moves around the, I feel the same way about Ron Harper Jr.,
And they redshirted Miles Johnson last year. They redshirted Miles Johnson last year, which is, incredible. So it tells you all about his development, too.
Yes.
I will say this. I've always said this and joked with people that Rutgers can't do the whole bag of cash thing because the bag man would call Sarge on the way back and tell him he did it. That's Rutgers. Hey, Sarge, ever gonna believe what I just did today?
I've got a video of it. Do you want it for the website? Yeah, exactly.
I think you hit the nail on the head. These are guys and I want to press Steve Peichel's not going anywhere. But if UCLA were to somehow hire Steve Peichel tomorrow, all the guys on that team I think still want to be at Rutgers. They want to be here. They want to build something. And I think that's a credit to him. I mean, these are not guys who they kind of tricked into coming. And
right.
These kids have all bought into Rutgers and building something. And they bought into his vision. And I think the whole fan base has bought into his vision now. And look, next year is going to be a big year.
Right.
For the first time really ever, there's going to be real expectations.
Right. Tomorrow on NJ.com, is Steve Peichel going to UCLA?
He's not. I just was throwing it out there.
I'm going to start it the first one. But you're right. No, there will be expectations, and they're going to have to. Yeah, I mean, if they win 7 or 8 Big Ten games this year, that's going to be. They're going to enter next year. People are going to be talking about not just the NIT, but I think people are going to be talking about maybe the NCAAs, which will be getting ahead of ourselves. But that's what happens with fans. So, all right. Anything else in basketball? You want to move to topic number 2, the football offseason. Football offseason. Let's do it.
Do we have to talk football? Really? We were having such a good time. We're on a roll.
Football rides the bus. Don't listen to me, Dave White. Football rides the bus, drives the bus here. Come on. We have to go there. All right. So this is my question to you guys. There's been a lot of changes. I think we all three of us agree that the recruiting class they got in was about as good as you could have expected, all things considered. And I have to add those 3 words, obviously, because it was still 13th in the Big Ten. They brought in some transfers. They shook up the coaching staff. Keith Sargeant. Right now, is this program in better shape than it was when the season ended?
I'm going to say I don't know, and I know that's not the answer that you want. And here's what I'm going to say, okay? Is there some skepticism regarding the recruiting class? Yes. Is there skepticism with some of the coaching hires that he's made? Yes. Is there skepticism with some of the players that they've lost, namely Jonah Jackson? Yes. So all those things, are issues. All that being said, and I've said this, pretty much since the end of the last season, the biggest thing that's going to determine whether or not they can actually make the leap is whether or not Chris Ash, who has talked long about being a developmental program, can get his 2016, his 2017, 2018 recruiting classes to develop. Can he develop those guys? This recruiting class, let's be honest, okay? The typical freshman, they really, you might get, major contributions from maybe 4 or 5 guys if you're lucky. Right. The biggest name guys are running backs. They're already set up running back. So the biggest thing that's going to be number one, can Art Sikowski, can he make a leap, and a major leap at that? That's going to be a big thing. And then, the developing of the offensive line. There's a lot of key questions on that James can probably answer too. A lot of question marks on defense, but all of the other stuff, as far as recruiting, which, like I said, you're probably right. It's probably better than what most people would have expected coming off 1-11. The coaching staff, could they have gotten, Anthony Campanelli or, maybe, 1 or 2 other big name guys who were out there. Mm-hmm. All those things, Rutgers fans have, are absolutely, perfectly fair to wonder, is Rutgers winning the offseason? Maybe they're not, but none of it really matters beyond the question of whether or not Chris Ash can actually develop his now juniors and seniors.
What do you think, James? Better than last year?
No.
When the season ended?
And the reason why I say that is this: when I look at it, with Jonah Jackson leaving and now going to Ohio State, their offensive line and their defensive line have regressed from where they were last year. Mm-hmm. And they weren't terribly good last year. And look, I understand that it's a limited market, but they didn't get a grad transfer defensive tackle. And I know it's very difficult because there's not a lot of those guys out there to begin with. But they didn't get one of those. They lost Jonah Jackson, and I know they're in on the kid Ryan Alexander, the South Alabama graduate transfer who's from Long Island. But as we get closer and closer to the spring, the longer a guy isn't committed to come, that usually kind of means the lesser the chances are that he's definitely coming to Rutgers. So if they don't land a guy who I would say is probably maybe in the second tier of the grad, or maybe near the bottom of the first tier grad transfer offensive lineman in the country, a guy who's around the corner, grew up in – if they don't land him, then who are you getting? I mean, there's other guys out there, but – and I think it gets back to what the grad transfer at any position is. You don't just want to go get a guy to say, hey, we got a guy. You need a guy who's going to step on the field and produce. And if you don't get another guy, then you're putting a lot of pressure on Amari Cooper, the junior college right tackle, to be that guy. You're probably moving Kamal Seymour inside maybe. You need Raekwon O'Neal to be your left. I mean, it's just – that's my issue, is that the recruiting class was better than I think a lot of people expected. There's some promising skill position players in there, but those guys are probably a year away. But in the trenches, Big Ten is a line of scrimmage league. They've gotten worse, and I think that's a major concern.
That is a really great point. Yep.
And I was going to say, as far as grad transfers goes, I know they don't grow on trees, but getting a grad transfer quarterback is still very, very vital. And I'm not saying a grad transfer quarterback to win to all of a sudden he comes in. Okay, this is the starter, because Sikowski, I think, is still going to have, be the guy who's going to be the front runner no matter who they bring in at this point. They weren't going to get Brandon Wimbush, let's be honest. And ready-made starters don't grow on trees on the grad transfer market. But that being said, they need someone that can give you confidence that if Sikowski doesn't show major progress in the first 2-3 weeks of the season, that you can turn to. And that was a major problem a year ago, where they didn't have a guy. They were trying to develop Sikowski, but then all of a sudden when they realized that he wasn't ready, they really didn't have a plan B. Can they get a plan B? Again, is Langen the guy? I don't know. There's certainly a lot of, talk about, that Boston College was going to move him, that he was the fifth best quarterback on the Boston College roster. We've heard all that. Can they get a grad transfer on the grad transfer market between now and training camp?
Right. And this we come back to, guys, by the way. And this, we just rattled off like 6 different things, really, like off the top of our heads that are question marks, right? Both lines. The quarterback might not develop. They still don't have a receiver that we can identify and say, all right, that's the guy who's going to be the playmaker they haven't had since going back several years now. There's just one thing after another that, the coaching staff they didn't get the hire that was going to make a difference in recruiting like we expected. I mean, they're just, they're just 6 things that, when you look at it, all right, so are all of those things going to go their way next year? It's really hard to imagine. I guess that's where I come back to, I get it that there are obstacles and it was hard to recruit off that and they did a good job getting some players in, but there are just still a lot of things a lot of boxes that they haven't checked or that they will have to check before, late August comes.
Yeah, no, just back to the grad transfer quarterback, I feel like it's like they need to thread a needle. It's increasingly looking like it's not going to happen. Like they need to find a guy who is a pro-style quarterback who is competent enough to potentially play in the Big Ten, but also not necessarily going to come here, not guarantee, he's going to have to come here not guaranteed playing time. Because as Sarge said, I still think that Sikowski is the front runner. He's the guy who they would want to ideally win the job and make major strides. And at the same time, he has to want to come to Rutgers, which has had this horrible offense. You're trying to find a needle in a haystack. And I just think that that's going to be difficult for them. And another thing too, I think everyone kind of assumes that every transfer is getting a waiver these days, and it might be the case, but Langan, we don't know if he's eligible. And if he's not eligible, you're probably talking about a backup quarterback battle behind Sikowski between Jonathan Lewis, who you showed no interest in letting play last year. You moved him to tight end.
Yeah.
And Cole Snyder, and I know fans are high on Cole Snyder, and I know John McNulty's very high on him, but he's a true freshman who played near Buffalo against far lesser competition than Art did at IMG.
Yeah, and
or even Ulbrich, for that matter.
And we've seen true freshmen how hard it is. And we've seen true freshmen how we've seen true freshmen how hard it is for true freshmen to come in and play in the Big Ten. And it's just the whole idea that he's going to be the guy who suddenly is ready to play in 2019 is so far-fetched.
So you're betting on Langan getting a waiver when he's a guy who, as Sarge said, was probably getting moved at Boston College. And tight end, I think it's even more of an issue. Very high on Alimo. I think he might be of the 3 transfers that came back in state, he might be the guy with the highest upside, but he doesn't get that waiver. You've got Vokalek, you've got Davon Robinson, who people are always saying could move to receiver, and you've got Jonathan Pimentel as a walk-on from Manalapan who's never played. You don't have a lot of depth at tight end, which is why I think Nakia Griffin-Stewart going to now at Pitt was quietly not as big, nowhere near as big of a blow as losing Jonah Jackson, but it's a blow because if something happens in that tight end room, you don't have much depth. At least you knew that Griffin was a serviceable tight end who could block, who could go on the field, make a catch or two when called upon.
Right. Well, all right. So that's, again, what did you think? Other than that, it's, well, I think the two developments in the offseason that were really concerning was certainly Jackson, not only just leaving, Jonah Jackson leaving, their best offensive player, but then going to Ohio State. So he's good enough to play. And I know there's some fans in the fan base that didn't think that was a big deal. To me, that was just the ultimate, that was just, I get it. Ohio State's better. They're going to beat you anyway, but still, you're losing your best offensive player to your best division rival. It's just bad. And the next one was Campanile. They identified a guy they wanted on the coaching staff. They went after him hard, and he not only said no thanks, but ends up in Michigan. So those are two, really for the image of what they're trying to build there. And, that was a tough couple of developments for Chris Ash.
And you have to put it in perspective. Well, I was going to just to put about, you have to put it in perspective because, if you're a Penn State fan, you're watching a lot of your guys transfer to, this is a day of age where, no one can predict. It's almost it's not there yet, but is about to be a free agent period in college football. We all get that,
Right.
that Rutgers, for as many transfers as they left, as they lost, they got a few as well. So you have to put that in perspective. But that being said, Jonah Jackson, who was your captain, a perceived leader, on the team, that was a certain loss, early in the offseason. But
the good news, beer. Sarge, you broke the story about beer coming to the stadium. I think certainly from a fan perspective, I'm sure it's long overdue. Is it a good decision? Is it going to be a game changer money wise? And are we going to see what I think some people fear, which is more public drunkenness?
Again, I'll let other people, decide whether or not it was a good decision or a bad decision. I'll say this. I mean, it's people drink. I mean, people drink, early, in the day at the tailgates. I've heard countless fans, in my Twitter and like comment section of fans who sneak alcohol into the games. People drink. So, the idea that Rutgers can't be making money on this, in this day of age when they need money, I think it's, a good thing. As a game changer, yes, Purdue, reportedly made over $1 million, this past year in revenue.
Really? Wow.
Right now it's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly how much Rutgers will stand to gain just in beer sales because they haven't signed a contract. They're putting out bids for a new company to come in, and so it all depends on the cut, the commission, what to get out of it. But you can certainly say that it's going to be well over in excess of 6 figures, to the bottom line. Signage, their marketing deal with IMG is only going to go up with signage and some of those opportunities, sponsorship opportunities. So, as far as, revenue, this is a game changer. I think that's, you use that word sometimes, not you, but that word is used sometimes a little bit too liberal, but I think it's certainly going to make a big difference toward the bottom line.
Yep. And it's going to make people a little bit, take the edge off just a little bit, right? Although I'm sure we're going to discuss, remember when the big controversy was that the coffee was cold? The beer's going to be warm, right?
But
that's going to be the controversy.
And people love complaining, right? But you just wait till the price point for like a Bud Draft will be like $11. Exactly. So people are going to complain.
It was $5 for a Diet Coke at the rack the other night.
They're going to complain about what type of beer. I mean, it's like free money to me, not free money, but like you don't sell beer. Now you sell beer. Like it just seems like this, like whatever you make is like basically going to be revenue, I would presume, for the most part. So I think people just need to calm down. Like this whole idea of like, there's like one drunken fan's going to get arrested and it's going to become like national news. And Steve knows this. At Giants games or Jets games, when the game ends and you come down to the press box and you have to walk to the post game, locker room and everything, you go past the drunk tank at MetLife Stadium and you see some fascinating things popping out of there. I would assume Rutgers will have something like that where if people get in trouble, they'll be shuttled to this place and the police will be there to handle it and they'll be given their ticket and sent on their way. I think there's nothing but good that can come out of this because we're at the point now too where all these, these providers, whether it's Nexo or Aramark or whoever, they cut off sales at a certain point during the game. They know how to identify, people who shouldn't get more alcohol, who have been overserved. There's all these safety mechanisms in place that maybe weren't in place 15, 20 years ago. I think for the most part, plus, you got to figure that a lot of fans are getting on a bus and going someplace else around campus, the park. So you've got that process. So I think it's nothing but good for Rutgers. It just makes sense. And I'm intrigued to see how much money they make, not only at basketball and football, but at wrestling matches and too, like baseball and other sports like that. I would assume they're going to have to build some sort of structure, by Baton Field and the softball field to sell alcohol. I don't think you're going to have some intern with a cooler just kind of throwing, 6-packs at people.
No, you could probably have a beer truck or something. I mean, there are probably ways to do it.
I know for one, I'm gonna need some serious alcohol to get back to a wrestling match. I will say that. I'm kidding, Kratch. I'm kidding. I know you love the wrestling. So Kratch has been on me to get out there. It's a thing. I get it. This is arguably not even arguably, but the best team of Rutgers going. They've got national championship contenders. They've got the best wrestler in the country at 145 pounds, Anthony Ashel. So I go to the match, and I think I just picked one that was a bit of a dud because I don't know. It was a bit on the dry side. Rutgers lost to Michigan. I had a hard time, what's the word I'm looking for? Knowing what the hell was going on. That was my biggest problem. Like every time, I kept saying to Kratch, like every time something happened, I'm like, well, that should be worth a point. He picked the kid up. No, it's not a point because blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that was right, Sarge. You're on my side with this.
I am on your side. I covered it.
Like it should be cut and dry, but it's not. It's confusing.
For sure. I covered on a highest level of, and I still, and I saw one fan go after you, is it that hard? You're a sports writer. Is what you get paid to do? No, it is that hard. Cause like I said, I was around it for a long time. It's not something you just like pick up a book and you have to watch it. And you're right. There's certain things that you're like, why wasn't that a point? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
No,
so you're the expert, James. You got to answer the question now. Is Ashnault going to win the national championship? And is Suriano going to, overcome what for him has been based on what I've read that you wrote, a subpar season? What do you think?
Anthony is going to win a national title. I think he's wrestling on an extremely high level. And, the one thing that Anthony's got going for him is that he's basically wrestled all the other top guys around his level. He really beat up Kolodzik from Princeton. Steve, if you'd come to that match, I know you were at the Super Bowl that day, that would have made you a true believer, right? That was the one of the best sporting events I've ever covered. The loudest I've ever heard the rack, although Minnesota the other night was pretty close. Suriano, I think this is what Rutgers fans, I think there's sort of like a Rutgers baggage that when Nick goes out and loses a match and loses three of them to other guys who are kind of ranked near the top of the country at 133 pounds, there's kind of this defeatist attitude of, he can't beat this guy. Or, Rutgers fans were kind of bent out of shape when he lost last year in the national final to Spencer Lee. And it's like, guys, Nick was in the hospital for a week with a serious infection, hadn't wrestled really in 6 weeks, and he got in on 2 shots, which means he almost scored, Steve, against the national champion and lost a relatively close bout. I think he's right there. The loss to Dayton Fix from Oklahoma State was kind of screwy with all the delays and the reviews and the hand to the face call, which is the right call, but it's kind of a ticky-tack foul. The loss to Iowa's Austin DeSanto was not a good loss for him. He was up big. He kind of stopped wrestling near the end, got taken down right at the buzzer. That being said, I think if he wrestles DeSanto again, I think he'll really kind of reverse that result and probably beat him handedly. And then Micic, who's, national finals last year in Michigan, when you were there, Steve, he was right. He out-wrestled the kid. He just didn't finish a shot, and Micic got the lone takedown. So he's right there. If I had to guess, I think that Nick's going to have a hard time winning a national title just because he's going to have to win 2 or 3 of those nip and tuck, 50-50 bouts. But I definitely think he can win a national title. And look, if Rutgers were to get 2 national champions after a season that I think has maybe disappointed fans a little bit, I think maybe the casual fan was looking for more kind of tangible success in these big-time dual meets. But it's a weird sport in a way that, it's a team thing, but it's also an individual thing. And I think that some of those individual bouts have been a lot closer than maybe the scoreboard has indicated, the final team score. But as you said, if people aren't wrestling diehards, they're not necessarily going to see the nuance of it all. But I do think Anthony wins a national title. Nick, I think, is a strong contender. I wouldn't pick him to win a national title going in. I would stick with Micic from Michigan, but I think he's certainly capable of winning that if they meet again.
You mentioned that didn't finish a shot. That's the entirety of Sarge's college dating career. Oh,
wow.
Oh, I was waiting for that one. I had to wait out that entire wrestling thing that Kratch was talking about to get that little zinger. All right.
Well done.
We got one thing. I appreciate it. All right. We've got I think we've got one more topic that we have to address because while It's just been, you thought the team of the winter was going to be the women's basketball team, and maybe it still will be, but I mean, my goodness, when you lose, see Vivian Stringer to a health scare, 2 players suspended, kicked off the team in a span of 4 days. I mean, that's not good. What's going on there? What do you think's going to happen, Sarge, with Stringer? Is she going to be back before the end of the year? I mean, give me your take.
Okay, so no one knows whether or not she's going to be back. I mean, they said in the press release that they're trying to the goal is to get her back after the Big Ten tournament. First off, as James Kratch wrote today, it's not a sure thing that they're going to get to the NCAA tournament. So you have that issue. And number 2 is no one's really acknowledging what the issue is. So until we really know, you've been around, Steve, for a long, long time, and I'll bring this up only to illustrate the point. Jim Boeheim, ran over someone and killed someone, and he was back coaching. And I'm not trying to make light of it. He was back coaching the next game.
Great point. Yes.
Coaches do not leave their teams.
Yep.
They are so, and I'm telling you, I've been doing this for so long. You've been doing it for a long time. Coaches are so wired not to leave their team under any circumstance.
Sarge, Steve Peichel was angry that he missed practice on the day he buried his mom. I mean, it's perfect examples right there on campus. You're totally right. And I thought the same thing, that it's the fact that they're not saying what it is. And you've heard the buzz. It's exhaustion or it's something. I mean, it's gotta be something that's serious for her to be away from the team, and to put a timetable that, hoping she'll get back for the NCAA tournament just seems very strange. I mean, she's certainly a strong, energetic woman. She's 71 years old. There's just a lot of questions that I have about it. And you don't want to speculate because you don't know, but it's hard. I mean, she's the face of that program. It's hard not to wonder, what's going to happen, what's going on behind the scenes. James, your thoughts?
I'll just say one thing that I knew about it, but I wasn't thinking about it. Someone pointed out to me last night, Monday night after the game, was, we're used to, when we think about the NCAA tournament for men's basketball, Selection Sunday, you literally have Michigan State in the Big Ten final, and that game ends and they go right to the selection show, and then the teams are playing again on Thursday. There's a week off between the end of the Big Ten women's basketball tournament championship game. It's on a Sunday, and then a week plus Monday is when the field is set. So it isn't like the Big Ten tournament will end for Rutgers wherever they land, and the team's playing again 4 or 5 days later. There is a week off, and then there's a couple of days after that. So I do think that does factor into the idea of when they say she's expected to be back after the Big Ten tournament. She kind of has another 2 weeks between then and when they would have to play again before she would be able to coach again. But I agree. I think there's definitely an open-endedness of some sorts to when she's going to be back. Tim Eatman, obviously the acting head coach. I do think they're going to get into the NCAA tournament. I think that Wisconsin is not very good, so beating Wisconsin at home on Monday night really helped them. I think if they had lost that game, that would have been a major blow to them from a committee standpoint. Even if they lose out, I still think with an RPI of in the top 25.
The RPI will go down, though. The RPI will go down,
but you've got 11 wins in the Big Ten. You beat Maryland when they were number 4 in the country on the road, and they really, and I don't know exactly where they're ranked, but they're still in the top 12, top 15. You've got a better resume than you did a year ago. Your RPI is going to be better. I do think that if they win one more game, they will clinch a double bye in the Big Ten tournament. They're in. If they lose out, which would be 2 losses in the regular season and 1 and done at the conference tournament, I still think they get in. It would be tight. They might be one of the last 4 teams in. But even then, I think you're right. It just seems like the optimistic outlook is that she'll be ready. Vivian Stringer will be back for the conference, for the national tournament. But it does seem kind of open-ended, and I think that, everyone knows it. I mean, obviously the clause in her contract that she could move to another position.
Right.
Like I think that right now, I think Rutgers, the focus is going to be on, supporting the team and the acting head coach, Tim Eatman, as they try to kind of get over the hump, get back to the tournament and everything. But I do think down the road, it's going to be, there's going to be probably some frank, tough discussions that Rutgers is going to have internally about, where they kind of go from here.
Right. And that is the bigger question, no matter what happens this month, is that, okay, so I would have said a month ago that they were going to have to give her a big, fat, happy contract extension. But, now if she does have health problems, if there's something, bigger at work here with some of the off the court problems, it is not the lock that it might have been. And, it's just, it's going to be, I mean, I don't know what the answer is. I certainly think if you were betting right now, you would bet that Vivian Stringer would be your coach when next season begins. But, it's going to be an interesting decision, for Pat Hobbs. And, I can see it going the other way too, Sarge. I don't know how you feel about it, but certainly I could imagine.
You just never want to. I mean, 3-4 different ADs have come to a point where do we extend her? Do we try to have a tough conversation? And they've all decided to extend her because she's a Hall of Famer who has 1,000 career wins and has meant so much to so many athletes, and it goes beyond the sport. Her impact. But that being said, she'll be 71, in March. The program, we're talking about the NCAA bubble. I still don't think, the one thing I will say, getting back to that, I'll be real quick, is, if they were to lose, I mean, I'm saying that they still have a lot of work to do because if they were to lose, a couple more regular season games, if they have a one and done in the Big Ten tournament, we're talking about a team that's lost 8 of their final 11, and they're a different team from the team that was, top, 16 in the country at one point because they're without their leading rebounder and their best playmaker. So, I will preface it by saying they do have a lot of work to do. And like, just to wrap up the point, she's, going to be 71. The team hasn't made the NCAA tournament since 2015. So, that is another, thing that sometimes you just have to make that decision. She has 2 more years left on the contract. She does have that clause in her contract where she could be an ambassador. You never want to force a coach out. All that being said, it's happened before. So I think I don't want to put odds on it, as it would be unfair, but I think there's a scenario in which she's not the coach next year.
And one thing I just want to throw in, she's had a lot of success recruiting lately. She's bringing some big-time recruits. But I think what kind of fascinating, underrated aspects is that, Steve Pikiell's had a lot of success recruiting kind of from the area. Obviously Miles Johnson's from California, but Ron Harper Jr., Paul Mulcahy, Geo Baker, guys in Montez Mathis. These are, Vivian's had a lot of success getting top recruits from Alabama, Louisiana, Texas. And it's just, has that become a factor? Because they're coming to Rutgers to play for her.
Of course.
They're not like this coming, it's not like a situation where, friends and family are going to see us play, because friends and family are pretty far away. They're not a quick drive on a Saturday, away. So I think does that become a factor of, we've got this team that we think we're building, but this team's coming for her, maybe more than they're coming for Rutgers.
Wow, we covered a lot of ground here. This was really a meaty, beefy podcast for the off season. We should do one every 3 months. That's clearly the model, right? We're doing these too often. I kid. We'll be back. Steve Politi, Keith Sargeant, James Kratch. Thanks for listening, and hopefully we'll be back sooner than 3 months next time. Bye-bye.